Adam. I'm a 5th-year medical student here at Imperial College. I'm also president of Imperial College Philosophy Society, and I'll be chairing tonight's event. Tonight's topic doesn't really need much of an introduction, as it's a question that is universal to everyone from the beginning of time. And I choose my words carefully because I don't want to take sides here. It may be a question till the end of time as well. So we have 4 speakers today. We have 2 atheist speakers on my right-hand side, and we have 2 theist speakers on my left-hand side. So just to introduce the speakers, on my far right we have Professor Peter Atkins. He's a professor of chemistry at the University of Oxford until his retirement in 2007. He continues to write books, which now number about 70, although most are textbooks. Some, such as Creation Revisited and Galileo's Finger, are books on science for the general public. He's an outspoken atheist, an honorary associate of the National Secular Society, and a distinguished supporter of the British Humanist Association. So we're glad you could be here tonight. To my near right, we have Alex Gabriel, who is president of the Oxford Atheist Society and a current undergraduate at Wadham College. Particular interests of his are moral objections to Christianity, religion in sociology, separation of church and state. He can be reached via Twitter on @_AlexGabriel. So again, we're glad you can make it today. In the theist corner, we have here to my near left, we have Hassan Choudhury, author of the forthcoming book God's ID. He's also an Islam channel presenter and an experienced public speaker on Islam and identity. To my far left, we have Muhammad Omar, a qualified medical doctor who graduated from Cambridge University. He is currently co-founder and director of a telecommunications company. So just so everyone's clear of the format, what we're going to do tonight, we're going to have 10 minutes from the atheist side first, which will then be followed by 10 minutes from the theist side, 10 minutes again from the atheist side, and then 10 minutes from the theist side. We're then going to go on to a cross-examination section, where each side will have 2 questions to pose directly to the opposing side, and we'll allow a bit of back and forth. We'll then go to the Q&A section, which will give all of you an opportunity to make any comments or raise any questions that you still might have. So just before we begin, what I'd like to do is just take a quick vote. So just by a raise of hands, how many of you already believe in a creator, in a God? So, you guys only worked out. And is there anyone who doesn't believe in a God? You guys are telling the talk. And is there anyone sort of in the middle who's going to make their mind up tonight? Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to welcome Professor Peter Atkins to start tonight's debate. Yeah. It's hard to tell, but it's working.
Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Clearly, we've got a lot of scope for improvement this evening. Really, is there a God? And we're going to argue, no, there isn't one. Now, I'm perfectly aware that several billion people, including innumerable admirable thinkers, and indeed including astonishingly a number of scientists, disagree with that view. But I'm afraid it is the truth. And quite frankly, I think it's up to the opposition to prove that there is a God, rather than for our side to prove that there is not one. Just as it's incumbent upon those who hold any positive view to demonstrate its validity. If you assert that there's 100 teapots in orbit around the sun, then it's up to you to demonstrate that there are, not for us to demonstrate that there are not. Likewise, if you believe in tooth fairies, then it's up to you to convince us of their existence, rather than for us to demonstrate that they do not exist. So it is with gods, and God in particular. Now, got one further, very important preliminary remark. We're not here to discuss whether belief in the existence of God is comforting, encouraging, or in any sense helpful. We're here to decide whether or not God exists. I'm perfectly prepared to accept that belief in God and the various sort of accoutrements of religion may be highly rewarding, creatively inspiring, and give great comfort. It may even inspire recovery from disease. That is not the point. Belief may indeed be encouraging, but it has nothing to do with the fact of existence of the thing in which that belief is expressed. Now, it's easy to believe, easy to understand why people believe that there is a God. There are historical, cultural, and personal reasons. However, the real and only test of God's existence is evidence. If there is no evidence that God exists, then regardless of our personal opinion and longing, then there is no justification in supposing that there is a God. I'll deal with those various aspects. I won't deal with all the dozen or so theological arguments for the existence of God, but will be prepared to take up particular points in the course of questioning later. First, history. Belief in gods is a remnant of humanity's groping towards understanding. As people began to wonder about the world around them and sought to ameliorate the violence of vicious nature, be it storm, wolf, or neighbour, they adopted simple expedients. Their explanations were largely based on the notion of powerful gods that exercised control and could be cajoled into siding with them against enemies if sufficiently vigorously and abjectly worshipped, or so certain coincidences seem to suggest. Those gods were gradually rolled up into a single all-powerful God, which is the one in which people still believe in their various ways. However, we know that understanding comes from a detailed understanding of the laws of nature, as exposed by application of the scientific method, and I will return to that point. Second, culture. Belief in cottage gods, then corporation god, was discovered to be a wonderful weapon of crowd control, far better and longer lasting than water cannon. Once the ruling classes had discovered that belief in gods enabled them to exercise control and intrude into the daily lives of its citizens with whisperings into the heads of hamlets and nations, they acquired wealth, power, and prestige. They ensured the propagation of their power by the cultural conditioning of the susceptible young. There was no truth in their pronouncements, and their holy books were no more than collections of folk tales and engaging inventions. It was not the truth, it was the capture of young minds with a view to control and conformity that led to widespread belief. Third, the personal. Belief in gods, and God in particular, is driven by the fear of personal annihilation and the view that the diseases and hardships of this life cannot be the whole story. Surely there must be something better to come. Surely this cannot be all there is. Surely there must be a paradise awaiting the good and a hell to get where the evil get their comeuppance. Unfortunately, there is no evidence that there is an afterlife of any kind whatsoever, despite the desperation and the longing and the assurances of various holy books. Thus, there are many drivers of belief in God, but desperation to believe is nothing in the face of the absence of evidence. Let's examine for a moment that point. What sort of evidence is presented by believers, and what are the arguments against it? One, the world needed to be created, so a creator God is needed. Now, I must admit that science cannot yet account for the emergence of the world from absolutely nothing. However, it has pushed back the frontier of ignorance to within fractions of seconds of the beginning, and there is no validity except pessimism in the view that it will not be able to contemplate the initial moment. Scientists are in fact beginning to struggle with the notion of creation ex nihilo. Contrast that with the wholly empty assertion that God made it. Science is all about immense intellectual effort. Religion is all about intellectual vacuity and self-delusion. If God exists, it's only as a word that expresses intellectual defeat. Secondly, there must have been a first cause, and therefore a first causa. Nonsense. It's logically inappropriate to extend our perception of causality back to that unique first event that puts causality in place. There are ways of accounting for an uncaused first event that avoid the role of a creator. The inception of the universe does not seem to need a God. The values of the third point is the values of the fundamental constants must have been selected by the benign creator. If that is true, then he seems to favour rocks more than life. There are several counter-arguments. I should be happy to take them up in discussion. Suffice it to say, at this point, that science is not without ideas about that question, and God figures in none of them. For instance, one is the view that life is nothing special. It's just one more property of a universe. And there is no logical reason for putting it on a pedestal. The formulation of this universe can be achieved without the need to invoke a God. The biosphere must have been prompted into existence. Well, sensible believers are perfectly content with accepting the notion that a God devised evolution as a promising route to man, despite the assertions of creationism. Fifthly, the world is here for a purpose, which God alone knows. Why should the universe have a purpose? The idea of a purpose is a wholly unjustified extrapolation from human experience. I consider that there is grandeur in the view that something as wonderful and huge as the entire universe is just hanging there, totally purposelessly. And because the universe has no purpose, there is no need to postulate a purposeful God. I was going to speak on morality. I'll leave that until later. I will also talk about the afterlife, which I will leave, but my time is up. I will ask you really to accept that